a number of donations during the Octopath run. We got $10 from A.E. Smith saying, can't watch, but got to donate during Octopath. Good luck, Sanjan. We got $15 from 30 saying, good luck to all the runners. Let's get to 100K. We got $10 from Sacool saying, I'm a simple nerd. I see KH prizes. I donate. We got $5 from Loon saying, I've been enjoying the heck out of this year's RPG Limit Break. Wild Arms is one of my favorite games, and I am excited to see you guys absolutely break it. So with that, the next run coming up is Wild Arms. It will be no ACE Unrestricted, and here is Chaos who will be running that. Take it away.
All right, this is Chaos. I'll be running Wild Arms. We'll get going right away. So timer starts in 3, 2, 1, now. So yeah, this is Wild Arms. It's a JRPG for the PS1. It was recently released re-released on the PS4 as part of the PlayStation Classic stuff. They released a whole bunch of old PS1 and PS2 games. So as part of that, they released Wild Arms in both the English and Japanese. I'm running in the Japanese version. The glitch I'll be using, which kind of differentiates the two versions, will come up later. The glitch is possible on both versions, but its effects differ between the English and Japanese version, and the Japanese version has better effects, so that's why I'm using the Japanese version. And I believe Rudy's name, which is coming up now, is cha0sRTA. Is that correct?
Let's just go ahead and refresh here real quick. So Rudy's name is in fact cha0sRTA.
All right, cool. We'll go with that. So yeah, even though it's Japanese, you can luckily input English characters, so did that there. So yeah, this category is no ACE Unrestricted. So there's a bit of layers to that category name. So first off, there's any %, which is just using ACE to do a credit call. It takes about 45 minutes to do at this point. And then there's any % no ACE, which bans ACE. So it goes through the game and still goes pretty quick. It's about an hour-and-a-half run. But by not using ACE, you still have to go through the final dungeon and fight the final bosses and all that. And then no ACE Unrestricted is basically no ACE, but you can use any version of the game, whereas any % no ACE has to be able to be completed on the original hardware, so PlayStation 1/2. Usually we just test on PlayStation 2 because no one has a PS1. But theoretically, the route should work on both of those systems if it's meant to be able to be used for any % no ACE. And then any % no ACE Unrestricted, categories that are specific to the PlayStation 4, for instance. That's where they belong there. So this run will be using some glitches that will just crash the PS1 and PS2 when you try to use them. Specifically, hollow memory manipulation, which is also the glitch that kind of makes the Japanese and English versions different. So we got Jack's name now. I think his name was Handpan last I checked.
It is. I'm sure that won't be confusing.
It's fine. Handpan's real name is in Japanese here. So Handpan is his wind mouse companion. So you can input the proper name there. It's actually a password prompt, and the door will open, but then you get knocked into the dungeon anyway, so you can't actually skip the dungeon. So you'll notice I picked Rudy. There's 3 protagonists you can start off the game with, and then throughout the game they come together and form a single party. So I started with Rudy, and that's because Rudy gets 5 heal berries, which is Wild Arm's version of a potion, so it heals 200 HP. And then immediately switch to Jack, because Jack can one-shot the enemies in his starter dungeon without any additional equipment. So we just get Rudy to get the heal berries, so Jack can heal himself. And then we switch immediately to Jack, because we'll need to do shopping with Jack so that Rudy and Cecilia can also one-shot their enemies in their starter dungeon. So now we're playing as Jack. And there's not too much to this dungeon. It's just some traversal, so there's some downtime here if there's anything to read.
Sure, we've been getting a few $10 donations. We got $10 from Danky Kang, we got $10 from ZZ, and we got $10 from Zoya.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
So these are encounters in this game. They're kind of in 3D versus the overworld stuff is all 2D. So the coolest thing about the PS4 release is that it's natively upscaling the game to 1080p. So while the pixel art, you don't notice much difference because it's just upscaling pixels, so just bigger boxes. But the 3D looks way better in this version than any other previous release. And kind of every run I've ever done at this game, whenever the 3D comes up, I always complain about how bad it looks. But the 3D actually doesn't look too bad in this version of the game. Like, all the textures are super muddy in the older versions, and you can't really tell what the detail on the textures is, and also all the lines are super jaggy. But because of the upscaling, the lines are no longer nearly as jaggy, and the textures are actually coming through perfectly, so you can see all the detail and how they originally intended to be seen. So that's probably the coolest part of this re-release, just seeing all the models with actual proper detail. I saved there because there's a small chance I'll die in these next couple of rooms. It's pretty rare I'll have to get ambushed by a skeleton and pillbug, and they'll have to do their strongest attacks on me. So it's not likely to happen, but it can happen, so always good to save. It did actually happen in a marathon run, and I didn't save, so I had to start the whole run over. So that was no fun. So from now on, no more hubris in the no save. Whoa. Supposed to throw a handpan there. So this next room, for casuals, is kind of tricky to run through, but I have a special movement technique where I let go of the dash and then change my directions once I've come to a stop. So this is the most dangerous encounter. But we should be fine here because the pillbug shouldn't do that much damage, and I went before him anyways. So no death this time. And I should mention the running system isn't the standard RPG running system where you just hold down a button and it just doubles your speed. It does double your speed, but it has a bit of a charge up time, and you can't change your direction once you're dashing in a certain direction. So it works like Link's Awakening's Pegasus boots more than anything else. So some exposition here. So we can kind of have some downtime here if there's anything else to read here.
Just a quick reminder that we are supporting the NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization, whose work is focused around 3 pillars: education and support, awareness, and advocacy. What does that mean? Advocacy. NAMI engages in federal advocacy and supports NAMI state organizations in their state-level advocacy efforts.
All right, so that's it with the exposition. It's basically just telling Jack to go to, or Handpan rather, to go to Adelhide, blah, blah, blah. Its story isn't that important. Usually I like to run in the English version because people can kind of follow along with the story, but we'll be skipping about 95% of it, so not too important. And with that, Jack's prologue is complete. Whenever you complete the 3 characters' prologues, you get this gray screen with some text, basically kind of hinting at the future for the character. Jack's all about seeking power for revenge, and revenge quests always end the same way in RPGs. You learn that the revenge isn't what you're truly after and all that, so same old story. And we're going to re-enter Jack. Sometimes we choose to change characters at this point, but we're going to re-enter and go to Adelhide immediately. Adelhide's the city where all 3 of the characters will come together to form a party, at least in the standard gameplay. And we want to do that because we're now going to do our first shopping trip to get weapons and armor for Rudy and Cecilia. so that they'll be able to go through their starter dungeons more easily. In a perfect run that you're going for world record and all that, you want to run from all the encounters, but that can be very random because it's based on your status luck, which is random. It's randomized at the start of the game, and your level compared to the enemies. So in the starter dungeons, it's about a 50% chance of running away from all the enemies. So for a marathon run, it's just simpler to fight all of the enemies. It also means you'll get some level ups potentially to make the boss fights more straightforward. So we're gonna buy the Rudy's weapon and Cecilia's weapon and armor. We're also buying 11 heal berries and 1 medicine. The medicine is needed for Cecilia's chapter because she can get diseased, which is a really bad status effect. It prevents you from getting healed. Getting chicken blocked. They move randomly, so you just kind of hope they don't get in your way. And yeah, we're back to Rudy. He's got to tackle the berry cave. A kid got lost in here, so we got to save him. So with the dashing in this game, there's some potential movement text, like I mentioned, waiting till your run has stopped so that you can change direction right when you're about to lose all momentum. And that kind of maintains your P speed so that you don't have to recharge your run. If you just try to change your direction immediately, you'll come to a full stop and have to recharge to start running in that direction. But by delaying it a little bit, you can maintain the charge going into one direction to kind of quickly change directions for your dashing. So we're going to go through this dungeon here. There's not too much more to this dungeon. It's the same idea with the memory temple, just some traversal. We'll fight all the encounters. With the sword we bought in Adelhide, we can now one-shot all but one enemy. This one, coincidentally, the cha0sRTA. So this will still take 2 attacks. So ideally we get a counterattack here, which we didn't. But as long as we go first both turns, it is about as long as getting a counterattack. cha0sRTA aren't the worst because you also get a lot of experience for fighting them. So we can potentially get level 2 for the boss, which will make it slightly more consistent. So one interesting thing about this game is that the characters come with tools. Jack had handpan, which is the flying mouse, which you throw to hit switches that you can't reach and also open treasure chests that you can't reach and all that. And Rudy starts with bombs, which if you've ever played a Zelda game, you know what bombs are for. Or if you have, some logic in you, you can kind of figure out what bombs can do. They blow stuff up. We won't be using them much, basically just in this dungeon because Rudy won't be used a whole lot. And he'll be using a different tool later on in the run, which those familiar with the game might not expect him to be using that specific tool. Because, well, we'll see. So not getting too bad of luck with the encounters. Ideally, you get some preemptives, because if you get a preemptive encounter, you get a 100% chance of running away, so you don't have to fight the encounter even in a marathon run. You can just choose to run away. I stopped running on that bridge there because if you run through the entire bridge, you get cursed, which causes you to be able to get constant encounters versus getting encounters every so often. And the encounters in this game are pretty consistent in how many you get because this game works off a step counter where after a certain number of steps, usually about 1,000, you can get encounters, but before that point, you cannot get encounters, and the step counter resets when you switch party members, or switch parties, or when you get an encounter. And when I say step, I actually mean pixel, so it's not actual literal steps that the character takes. It's 1,000 pixels of movement, and you'll be able to get an encounter. So the encounter rate's not too bad in this game, so you'll get about 3 to 4 in Memory Temple and about 5 to 6 in this dungeon. So we'll pick up these apples here. Those apples increase your stats by 1 each. So they're kind of like the magic tabs in Chrono Trigger, for instance. Oh, that was a preemptive, but I was using turbo, so I went through it too quickly to recognize it was preemptive to run away. But that's okay. I might get level 2 off this encounter, so... Or I might have already gotten level 2, I wasn't really paying attention. So yeah, it's a good time to mention I'm using a turbo controller. I'm using a Hori gamepad for the PS4. It has 20 Hz turbo, which is which equals 20 inputs per second. And the best you can get is 30 inputs per second, but 20 is perfectly fine. This game runs at 60 frames per second, so it's pretty fast, way faster than I can mash naturally. And you'll see later on this game, if I didn't use turbo, my hand would die for this category, so it's good to use, especially for this run. So I'm still at full health, so don't need to heal before the boss. I save before the boss. At level 2, it's very unlikely I'll need to, or I'll die. Only way I'll really be in danger is if I run out of heal berries, but that shouldn't happen. And as long as I hit most of my shots, the fight shouldn't take too long either. The problem with this fight is that you have an 86% chance of hitting with your hand cannon, but you only have 8 bullets in your hand cannon, so if you just keep missing, you can kind of get into a problematic state. So I picked up the bullet clip for safety so I can reload and get 8 more shots in. And the boss only has 800 health, and each shot does about 100, so with 16 bullets in total, I should be fine. Can't miss all that much. I'd be extraordinarily unlucky if that happened. But save just in case. So a good thing about being level 2 for this fight is that your arm damage, which is your hand cannon, for instance, takes your level into account for damage. So with level 2, I'm doing about 10 points more damage than if I was level 1 with my hand cannon, which usually doesn't matter, but because the hand cannon does around 100, it can do more, it can do less. Having that additional 10 points makes it more likely to do over 100 miss. So it's more likely to kill the boss in 7 shots rather than 8. So Rotten Breath is the main attack the enemy does. It does 20% of your max health, so it makes being level 2 with an HP increase not that important. The only reason being level 2 is that much better is for the arm damage increase for this boss. I want to heal when I'm below 50 damage because there's some variance in the amount of damage Rotten Breath will do. Ideally, the heal berry comes out after the boss attack so that I go into the next round with full health. But it's not too big of a deal if that happens, because the turns in this game are semi-random, where you're not guaranteed to go before or after the boss unless you have a large amount of more speed than the boss. And because Rudy and Rotten Zombie have close to the same speed value, they kind of trade going first and second between each other. So far, I think I've only missed once and getting a lot of regular attacks, which is good because it means I get more hits in before I have to heal again. So this fight is pretty much in the bag. I'm seeing that I've done a lot of over 100 damage. There we go. So yeah, that was a real quick fight, so that's good. So there's a bunch of dialogue here, so we can fit in anything if you've got anything for us.
Yeah, we got yet another $10 donation from the Axeman saying, Wild Arms is one of my favorite series, and it would be really, really cool if I could get TASBot to play it someday. Until then this will have to do. Good luck on the run.
All right, thank you. Yeah, it's pretty close. If you know about Rudy, you know. Since this game will be skipping 95% of the plot, I'll avoid spoilers. And it's in Japanese, so you can't. Well, maybe some people can read it, but most people watching this probably can't. You will see the final boss. That's about it, though. So if you're worried about spoilers, don't worry too much. The final boss isn't that surprising. So yeah, Rudy's getting kicked out of the village because he's using forbidden arm technology, which is based on the demons, which were vanquished 1,000 years ago, but there's a lot of superstition around them. Weirdly, though, this town seems to be the only town that actually cares about the demons, or that superstition, because every other town has arm meisters that can upgrade your arm, basically. And that's Rudy's prologue done, so we're making decent time here. Only one more prologue left, which also means probably want to cut off donations for the name soon. I'd still have to walk Rudy to Adelhide, so a little bit of time, but Cecilia's naming is coming up now. So yeah, classic silent protagonist gets kicked out of the starting village for things outside of his control, for doing the right thing. Legend of Mana? Secret of Mana? One of those Mana games. Yeah, Secret of Mana. similar story there. So we'll take Rudy to Adelhide 2. And we got 0 encounter Adelhide. That's pretty rare for Rudy. Usually he gets 1 encounter going there. And going to switch immediately to Cecilia. Don't have to do any more shopping. And this is the final character, and by far the most important, as we'll see going through the run. And the naming is coming up right now. And Ophelia? Is that how you pronounce it or spell it? I think that was winning last I checked.
Actually, Ophelia got beat out by just a bit by ZZ. So it's capital ZEZE.
Okay. Cool. Less characters. And Cecilia's name is the most important for short characters because the scrolling text is really slow and it repeats Cecilia's name a bunch of times, so shorter the better for Cecilia's name in particular. The other ones don't really matter. So yeah, Guardian's communicating with her and asking her name, and now we get to pick it. So ZZ. Almost went with another capital Z. All right, there we go. All 3 names, so those are the incentives. And now the Guardian shows its face. Might not be obvious, but it's a turtle. It's also supposed to be in shadow, so it's hard to tell what it is. And the Guardians in this game are like the 4 kind of Japanese gods or whatever, like the turtle, the firebird, the wind cat thing, and the earth beast. There's some sort of legend in Japan about those. So yeah, Cecilia wakes up in magic school. She is the magical girl of this RPG, where Rudy has the guns, Jack has the sword, and Cecilia wields the magic. And she's graduating today and returning to Adelhide, so she has to say goodbye to everybody. So we're making our goodbye tour here. And first person we talk to has made a mess of the library. Instead of picking up those 10 books, she wants us to get an item. Oh, double talked. So the danger of using Turbo is a lot more likely to get a double talk, and she's the worst person to double talk to because she goes on and on and on. But yeah, we got to get a timer winding device to put those books back on the shelf, which is Hermione levels of lazy with the timer winding potion. But you know, who has time to pick up books? Picking up the 1 more stat item we want there with the Mystic Apple that increases magic by 1 stat. So we'll talk to Angie here, who will give us the pocket watch to rewind time. But in order to get the watch, we have to use our teardrop, which is Cecilia's starting tool, near the rock. And it reacts to Guardian activity, so it confirms the theory that the teardrop is connected to the Guardian's powers. And we get the pocket watch, which we'll be using later on the run in interesting ways, but for now we'll stick with the teardrop. It's basically a glorified key, the teardrop, where it'll open certain doors, and that's basically all it does. But it's the pendant. It's like the important magical girl princess pendant in all RPGs. So it has a lot of plot relevance. So we clean up the library, but 1 book remains on the ground. It is too magical to get put back on the shelf through time magic. And it's calling Cecilia to the sealed library. It's the same voice that she heard in her dreams, so now we gotta find out where the sealed library location is. So this prologue is a lot of talking to NPCs, whereas the other 2 prologues are just dungeon exploration. And if you're a casual playing this section can take a while because you just have to know who to talk to at the right time. On a speedrun, you know that already, obviously, so you just gotta talk to a couple people before going straight to the dungeon. So just gotta be careful about double talking here. Switch to manually mashing to avoid that. And the only other person we have to talk to is her, or she tells us that the statues in the courtyard have switches on them, and you can move them if you want. And Cecilia's mechanic is special in that she can bind and unbind spells. So we're going to bind certain spells here. The first one we want is Spark, which is a group attack that is lightning elemental. Next one we want is Valkyrie, which is a random attack. It does 8 individual attacks on random enemies, so it's good for eliminating a lot of enemies at once, but is random, so it can kind of mess you up if it just hits one enemy instead of all the enemies that you want it to hit. And we got Freeze, which is for boss encounters. And we got Freeze over Flame, even though they do the same amount of damage to the enemy. And the reason for that is that Freeze's animation is 4 seconds faster than Flame's animation. So over time, it saves a whole bunch of time using Freeze versus Flame. And we save there because we can die in this dungeon as well. It's very unlikely. I've never actually had it happen, but it is theoretically possible if I get ambushed by 3 books and they all use Freeze on me. It's a very high damage spell, and Cecilia doesn't have a lot of health. So I think it should have happened to me by now, but it hasn't happened yet, so maybe tempting fate here. But if it does happen, it's not too big of a deal. I just have to push these statues again and go back into the dungeon. The dungeon's not too long, so won't lose too much progress, but ideally it doesn't happen because time waste is lame. And this dungeon is the only dungeon we actually want to fight the fights in the prologue, even in a speedrun or a world record attempt context, because when Cecilia gets level 2 against the boss, she goes way faster than if she's level 1. So we get 3 encounters in the dungeon, and we want to get 40 XP to get to level 2, which is very rare. We want to see books because they give you more experience than the other enemy type, the Gagasins, which only give 4 experience versus 6. And we want to see a bunch of books in a group so that we can hit them all at once with Spark so the fights don't take a long time. Worst fights we can see are Gagasin, then a book, then Gagasin, because they're all in separate groups. So you gotta hope Valkyrie hits them all properly. So this is a decent fight. We get 2 books, and we go first so we can spark them both before they have a chance to attack. So we get 12 experience from that, so we only need 28 more. So looking good for level 2 at this point. These first few rooms, you can only encounter books, so they're the most likely to give you a bunch of experience. In the big room is where you start seeing Gagasins show up. And also where you get 2 encounters. You only get 1 encounter in those first few rooms because of how the step count works. So next section here, we gotta burn 3 books to open the door. For some reason, just, don't question the logic. So we're going through book burning here. We can't run while holding books, so kind of slows us down a little bit. These are the Gagasins. You don't really want to see them, but they came in a single group anyway, so we can use Spark to eliminate them quickly. One good thing about them is they don't do a whole lot of damage. They are the enemy that can use disease on you, which can be annoying, which is why we buy the medicine. But ideally you don't see it because it wastes time having to use the medicine. So that's 2 out of 3 encounters. That's only 8 experience, and we got 12 before, so we need 20 experience, which means we cannot get level 2, in fact. So that's unfortunate. We will still get that 3rd encounter, unless we're really lucky. We could force a 4th encounter to guarantee level 2, but at that point, kind of cancels out the time gain you would get from having level 2 against the boss by forcing an additional encounter. So we did not get level 2, but we got good encounters for not getting level 2 because they're all single group encounters, so we can quickly eliminate them with Spark. They weren't multi-group encounters, so we didn't have to rely on Valkyrie's RNG. So now we have the boss encounter. We're going to do our first setup for a glitch here. Not actual glitch, but setup. We didn't pick up the magic carrot, but that's not okay. Quick backtrack. I've literally never done that before. Oh wait, there's a faster one I can get. So we're forcing the 4th encounter. Oh, according to plan. So we should get level 2 now. And of course it's a group encounter. So this is Valkyrie. It does 8 attacks randomly. We got good RNG, not quite. Okay, yeah, it killed all 3 of them, so that's good. And yeah, we got level 2. And we'll pick up the magic carrot here. Can't believe I don't think I've ever missed the magic carrot before, but you know. Not too big of a deal. We need the magic carrot, A, because we need a lot of MP for this boss fight, and B, because it's a part of the glitch setup we're doing here. So we're going to move a bunch of items down lower into this inventory here, and then we're going to do an arrange. This sets up what we call phantom slots, where even though we did the arrange and moved the items back up, the empty slots still retain the item ID of the item that was in there. So when we do item duplication later on, we can dupe on those slots to get the item that did possess, or items that were in those slots. So just a little bit of setup for some item duplication later on. And because we're level 2, we can actually switch to auto battle. I think that's the correct one. Yeah. Usually switch to auto battle when it's in English so I can confirm which one is the correct one. Auto battle is good because you don't have to do manual inputs, so it's a lot faster. You can't really do auto battle at level 1 because you have to heal too frequently. We will still potentially heal in this fight if we go below 24 health, because 2 hits from him with his most powerful attack would do 24 damage, so can potentially kill if he goes before you in the second turn that you try to heal. But otherwise, just watch the freeze spam. Freeze is nice because, as I mentioned before, it has a real quick animation and does a good amount of damage, especially at level 2. You get a bit of a sorcery boost, so the fight goes pretty quickly. I just have to remember to switch Cecilia off auto battle before we start doing item duplication, because we need to manually input commands for her. So that's basically her prologue finish, so some downtime here.
Sure. So just want to point out that we have some incentives for the Quest 64 run coming up, including a crash showcase to show off several entertaining ways to crash the game. Please, take a look at that. If you want to see some exciting glitches, put your donations toward that. We're also over $39,000 now, so we're coming up on 40K. Let's keep them coming.
Nice. So we're about to exit Cecilia's prologue. We're going to do one thing before we exit. We're actually going to rebind some spells. We no longer need Spark or Freeze. We still need Valkyrie for a couple of reasons, but we don't need those, so we want to free those crests up so we can bind different magic. First one we're going to bind is Escape. It's the dungeon exit spell of this game, so it comes in handy for just one occasion in this run. Unless we mess up, then we'll need to use it a couple times, but ideally only use it once. And then Sleep, which is good for item duplication because you dupe items in battle. So enemies will have a turn while you're trying to dupe items, so Sleep basically puts them to sleep, as the name implies, and makes them so they don't perform any actions, so kind of saves some time. Also has the additional benefit of when an enemy is put to sleep, they can't prevent you from running away. So if all the enemies are asleep, you have a 100% chance of running away. So it can come in handy. And before we enter, we're going to switch to the pocket watch on Cecilia and then make our way to Adelhide. And 0 encounter Adelhide for Cecilia as well. And I think it was only 1 encounter for Jack. He can potentially get 2. So good Adelhide traversals. First thing we're going to do here is do some additional shopping by missing the door. We're going to buy some more heal berries just because. We're going to buy a pinwheel, a toy hammer, and 5 holy symbols. These are needed as part of the hollow memory manipulation glitch we're going to be using later on the run, but I'll explain that later. Suffice to say, they're all status healing items, and we'll need to use or heal some statuses as part of that glitch. So we're talking to Emma here. Once you have all 3 prologues completed, you can talk to her to enable the ability to recruit other members into your party. So we're going to enable that for Cecilia here, and then stopwatch back to the entrance, and then recruit Jack. At this point in the game, you're supposed to recruit Jack and Rudy, and the game forces you to do that by preventing you from going through Lithia's tomb with anything less than 3 people. But we're not going to recruit Rudy, because we can do some glitches if we only have 2 members in our party. Or that's not true, we can do the glitch with 3 members in our party, but we'd rather only have 2 for some later on glitches. And because they prevent you from going through Lithia's tomb without 3 members, we're going to start doing glitches here. This is kind of where the Wild Arms run actually begins. The prologues are just prologues, and now the real run starts. So this first glitch is called Party Switch Out of Bounds, where you line up on the pixel where the door load zone is, and then you open the party menu right when you move. Like so. And then switch to the other party member. And then you can move out of bounds. So this bypasses the guards that prevent you from going further. And we're going to run past the stones there. If you have Rudy in your party, it's less dangerous because he can use bombs to break those stones, but without Rudy, we have to be very careful not to get stuck behind them. So a couple out of bounds there. This out of bounds isn't strictly necessary, but saves time. Especially if you mess it up a bunch of times. There we go. So this game runs at 60 frames per second, and that trick is frame perfect, so it's kind of difficult. It's not too bad because it's the same timing every time. So we're going to start duping here, actually. Oh, we forgot to switch out auto battle. I called it. Please don't kill all of them. That would be annoying. All right, that's not the worst thing. So how item duplication works in this game, and the other one ran away. Well, I'll start explaining it now. I guess I should finish the other explanation. So yeah, this game runs at 60 frames per second, and you have to open the menu on the perfect frames. So the out of bounds is kind of tricky. It's not too tricky because it's the same timing every time. So you just kind of develop a muscle memory for it. Ideally, although my muscle memory is a bit off. All right, that's all the out of bounds for Lithia's tomb. We'll probably get an encounter here. So, item duplication in battle, you use a heal berry or any other consumable, switch off auto battle, and then move the heal berry to an empty slot where I previously set up those phantom slots before the Cecilia boss fight. And what will happen is that when Jack uses the heal berry, it will negate 1 from the slot that I originally used, and because there's an empty slot where I originally used an item, it will negate 1 from 0 and dupe the item, as you can see here. Because if you negate 1 from 0 in this situation, it goes all the way around to 255, which is the max value an item quantity can have. So we're going to do that a few times to dupe magic carrots and then all the stat items, or stat apples. So just 3 more dupes here. Rat monkeys, which are the enemy we're facing right now, cannot be put to sleep, so they're the worst encounter to duplicate on, but just kind of take what you can get. They're also kind of annoying because they can provoke counterattacks from you, so you can potentially end the fight before you're finished duping. Like so. So there's still 2 more items we have to do, but we can get them in the next encounter. So we do have a couple apples duped, so I'm going to use my turbo button to quickly buff up ZZ's sorcery stat, which is her magic damage increasing stat. So we're going to go all the way to 2, switch to manual input so we don't overshoot it, and then buff up defense a little bit on Jack and Cecilia, or ZZ and Handpan. Jack's more important because he has a solo fight coming up. So we're going to go through a door that's out of bounds, so I'm going to use a specific timing here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So I moved left for 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, which is a very scientific way of moving out of bounds. I'm going to force an encounter here because I need to do a little bit more duping. And how that trick worked is that if there's a door directly above the room you're in, it counts as being in bounds. So you can actually go through the load zone. You typically can't because there's collision in the way, but because we went out of bounds and through the load zone, it triggered the door trigger, so we went to a room much later on in the dungeon. These turkeys can be put to sleep. It's not 100% though, I believe it's 70% odds. So we just kind of hope it procs. If both get put to sleep, then we can run away, otherwise we'll have to kill them, because we cannot run away from them naturally. Oh, they're both asleep, so we can run away. And we've done all our duping, so we don't need anything else from this fight. And we'll finish using our stat items here. So we'll buff Handpan's strength a little bit here, and then Cecilia's speed a little bit, so she's guaranteed to go before the next boss fight. So this tech here is very minor, especially compared to all the out of bounds I just did, but it took a long time to truly optimize these bricks here. You have to push all 4 bricks into the 4 holes around the statue. And we leave that one over here for last, and we push it in this specific way, because when the statue disappears, and they all disappear, it bounces Cecilia back, and the way we did it, it bounces Cecilia back so that she's aligned up with the stairs perfectly. If you do it any other way, she'll end up getting bounced in a way that she's not lined up with the stairs. So it's just a nice little optimization there. And this is Mag Tortoise. Previously, Cecilia's spells have been doing about 50 damage or so, but we buffed her a little bit, so she's going to do a little bit more now. We're going to use Valkyrie, because it's more higher damage than Sleep, which doesn't do any damage at all, in fact. And she does 2,152. And that is more damage than HP the boss has. It only has 2,000. So it's an insta-death there. And I equipped the water rune before the fight, because without that, it's a damage range to kill the boss. Sometimes you do below 2,000 damage. What the water rune does is it increases Cecilia's sorcery stat by 10%. So we got some cutscenes here. We just discovered a giant robot, which is fun, so we got some downtime here.
Sure. We did get a $20 donation from Racodactylus saying, "Good luck, Chaos."
Nice. Thank you. Cool.
Yeah, and yeah. Please remember, we have lots of exciting incentives coming up and lots of prizes that you can get if you donate, so keep them coming in.
Dactylus is a fellow Wild Arms runner, so shoutouts. Lots of Wild Arms runners, especially recently, have kind of cropped up. One runner/glitch finder named Uru from the Japanese community actually has contributed, probably contributed the most in recent years to the game. Uru discovered item generation and some other tech, mostly with Be Good, was where most of Uru's tech was applied, but item generation ended up being applied to this run specifically. It'll come up in a little bit here. So shouts to Uru. And Cliving as well has contributed a bit to this category, figuring out better setups for certain things. And Cliving also runs Be Good. Gotta move my keyboard. My cat's coming in. Chomsky. So going back to Adelhide after completing Lithia's tomb, this triggers an event where we can sleep at the inn, and this will remove Cecilia from our party. And what this does is it activates something called the Switch Anywhere glitch, where the game expects Jack and Rudy to be in the same party right now, so it allows Jack and Rudy to switch between each other. But because they're in different parties, we can actually switch between two separate parties, which for most of the game doesn't happen naturally. There's only a few specific dungeons where this will actually happen in. So there's not too many glitches we use in this category that is related to Switch Anywhere. The set for hollow memory manipulation uses it, but other categories use it more frequently. So we sleep at the inn, and this activates the festival cutscene. So we're gonna go to the festival with Jack, and as in every good game, the festival is gonna get invaded by the demons, and we're going to trigger that event so that we can proceed in the game. First, we gotta talk to a lady here who's missing her son, who has a red balloon, so we gotta find a kid with a red balloon. And moving in the festival can be difficult because the NPCs have random movement. Oh. So once we talk to her, we can now find the balloon kid in town. So he's just over here. Talk to him. He lets go of his balloon. And now tragedy strikes. So this triggers the invasion sequence where Belzelk invades Adelhide. And this is where we're going to use one of the most infamous glitches. It's just the same out of bounds glitch we have been using, the party switch out of bounds. But if you fail the out of bounds and go too far, you'll actually trigger a cutscene and get locked into Adelhide Castle. There is a backup strat to escape Adelhide Castle without doing the standard way of going through the sewer access and all that. So it's not too big of a deal, but it does waste a bunch of time. So ideally, we get Belzelk skip first try. And if not, Belzelk will laugh at us, rightfully so. And right now, Jack is alone. Usually the game expects Jack and Rudy to be together and kind of bounces the next fight, expecting them to be together. So it's kind of a difficult fight for Jack solo if you don't buff his stats, which is why I gave him those hardy apples and power apples to increase his strength and defense. So we're just going to move through these enemies here. It looks like it's difficult to move through these enemies, but you can kind of run into them pretty easily and still not trigger an encounter. Now we're going to go up here and save Cecilia, who, even though she can do 2,000 damage, is struggling here. She got caught off guard. It was a bad day. So we attack the skeleton first, A, because he's the first target, so can just hold down the turbo button. And B, he's the only one with special attack, which you can't counterattack. So getting rid of him first is the most ideal, so you get the best chance of doing counterattacks on the lizardmen. So once you complete this fight, it'll make Jack and Cecilia the main party of the game, which will come into importance a bit later on. So just remember, the game thinks my party consists of Jack and Cecilia at this moment. So we're going to move up a bit, then switch to Rudy. And Rudy is in Adelhide pre-invasion somehow. And this is because the game has about 7 different copies of Adelhide as different areas, because Adelhide goes through a lot of changes, so we can kind of store pre-invasion Adelhide by having Rudy there, which is why we moved Rudy to Adelhide. Okay, so gonna move up here. Ignore Cecilia there, she's in my party. Ah, we got the Belzelk laugh. So didn't get the Belzelk skip, that's fine. I saved with Rudy, but it's not actually necessary to save there. I only save there just in case the backup strat doesn't actually work. So Belzelk laughs at us for failing the skip, and we gotta escape from Adelhide Castle now. So this uses a glitch that we would otherwise not see in the run at all, called camera switch. This uses the different parties to be able to load different rooms by going out of bounds, moving to the room you want to load, and then switching to Rudy, and then back to Jack and Cecilia. And that will cause the game to think I'm in that room and switch to that room instead of the room I'm currently in. So it's a good way to go out of bounds and kind of go where you want to go. So going to move just to the left of this room, go to Rudy, and then back to Jack. And I'm outside of the castle. I'm not in an ideal position. I'm actually slightly inbounds, which is not what we want, because we have to go the long way to escape the castle. You just have to remember how to get through these trees. So we go the long way around. This is all not in bounds, so you can kind of go outside of the bounds here to get past the guards that would otherwise prevent you from going back to town. So we're just gonna go here, then we're back in Adelhide, and we can try the skip again. We failed again. But this isn't as big of a deal. We get festival bells up now, because we're just gonna go back to where I was if we aren't gonna be put behind the guards. And because the game kind of gets messed up, it messes up the music array. So now it's playing happy music for Belzelk invading. So we can just go back into town. All right, and we got it. Not as quickly as I would have liked, but that's okay. It's always great when I get that first try in Marathon, but on the other hand, it's good to show off the backup strat if I do fail it. And Belzelk, or Festival of Belzelk, is always a funny thing to show off, so I'll claim that was intentional. So now we're going to move the two parties to Mountain Pass, which is where we're going to do the most important glitch in the game, hollow memory manipulation. But first we're going to save, because if we mess up the glitch, we cannot progress. So we're going to save here to make sure we get it all correct. So first step is moving Jack and Cecilia and then Rudy to Mountain Pass. We want Jack and Cecilia to enter first so that they can set up a trick called Guard Skip, which allows a party member to get past the guards that prevent you from going through Mountain Pass before the festival is complete. And how it works is that you set up one of the parties to act as kind of a barrier to prevent the knockback the guards give you. So I'm going to move Jack and Cecilia in a position that will prevent the guard knockback when Rudy is in there. So Jack and Cecilia won't be visible when Rudy is in the cave, but their hitbox will still be there. So going to move Jack to a specific position here. And then switch back to Rudy and enter the cave. And we're going to run here. And we're trying to fit in between Jack and the guards. There we go. So that'll prevent the bounce back, so Rudy can then walk past the guards there. So that's Guard Skip. Now the next glitch I'm about to do is called Hollow Man. It's when you pick up a tool with an incomplete party. The game always expects you to have a complete party when you pick up a tool. So when you don't, you get this memory corruption called Hollow Man, and it also recruits the game, what the game thinks is your main party. That's why Jack or Handpan and ZZ are also in my party. So you'll notice I have 4 people in our party. So going to switch to Jack, then Cecilia. This will move Hollow Man to be the final member of our party. So this is important for hollow memory manipulation, which I'm now going to do. The first thing I'm going to do is move the tool index of Rudy by 1. This corrupts Jack's stats. Move it again. This corrupts Cecilia's stats. And then I'm going to move it 7 more times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now, if I open this, this will be alternating between 2 items which are corrupted items. And I'm going to hold down a button for the next minute and a half. So this is a good time to bring down the game audio because it will kind of be making a noise for about a minute and a half. And I'm going to repeatedly be unequipping these two items. And because they're corrupted items, they're going to be filling up my inventory with data because the game doesn't recognize them as actual items, so they don't form stacks. So it's just adding individual entries into my inventory, and I want to do that until my entire inventory is full. And once they are in that inventory, they're going to be interpreted as actual items. So this gets me the crystal flower that you usually get from Maze of Death, as well as a small flower, which you can buy from the festival. And we want to do this for a very long time. I actually forgot to check the clock when I started to see how long I need to do this. But yeah, so we want to fill up our inventory for something called item generation. What item generation is, it's an ability or a glitch that allows you to create any item in the game. And how it works is that with a full inventory, whenever you add an additional item to the inventory, it actually increments the item ID of the final item in your inventory by 1. So by doing this, you can actually create any item in the game. So that's why we want a full inventory. I'm going to check how much we got here. Yeah, we got a full inventory. Pretty much exactly. So I'm going to unequip 2 more times. And this will increment the item ID of the final item, which turned my small flower into an ocarina. Now next, I want to use the 3 status items I bought earlier on Rudy. Right now, Hollow Man points to an arbitrary point in memory, and we want it to point at a very specific point in memory. And one of the things that controls where it's pointing in memory is the status flags on Rudy right now. So I'm going to cure Confusion, Forgetfulness, and Curse on Rudy. This moves where the memory is pointing to the story flag section of memory, but we're not at the exact point in memory that we want to be at. So now we're going to move the tool cursor, which is the second thing which controls the point in memory we're pointing at, and we want to move it 150 times. We don't actually have to count it because we look for a specific text that's going to display here. So we want to move it to a very specific position here to point to the story flags we want to manipulate. So it's coming up. Got to be very precise here, because if I go too far, I can't go back. And that's the point I want to do. And now I want to do a few things. I want to use 4 power apples on Hollow Man. Did I use 3 or 4? I think I used 4. Want to unequip Rune. I'm going to use 1 more. Do I want to use 1 more? And set the auto battle to 2. I'm going to use 1 more. So that should be fine. And now that's set all the flags I need. And now going to escape out. And now going to leave Mountain Pass. And because we have the Ocarina, we're going to use it to do something called Ocarina of Bounds, where you set up the golem at a specific point and then use the Ocarina to clip into the golem to send yourself out of bounds. So I clipped out of bounds here, so going to move down now to this continent here. So just moving to the town of Malama here. Got an encounter, but we can just run away from it because it's just a goblin. So we're going to do some more item generation here. We're going to save just in case we mess something up. So to do item generation in town, we're going to have to do some shopping because we need to refill our inventory because we use those 2 status items. So we're going to buy 50 heal berries, or 40. Sell some power apples. And then buy Violet Rose and a heat salve. So we're going to move specific items to the bottom of our inventory. First, Healberry. We want to dupe them or item generate 4 revives off the Healberry, so we're going to buy 5 antidotes. And what this does is it increments the item ID of Healberry by 5, so we get 4 revives. Next, we want to move the holy symbols down and buy 15 Healberries. This will increment the item ID by 15 to get more crest grafts. And next we want to move the power apples down and buy 61. This gets goat dogs, which is an important item we'll be using later on. And next we want to use the heat salve to create the sheriff star, and to do that we need to buy 93 Healberries because it's far away in item ID. And then we just need to use the violet rose to create a Gimel coin. And we do that by buying 13 Healberries. So this is all using item generation, buying a certain amount to increase the item ID. And for the viewer's sake, I don't actually have to do this. I'm going to sell this hardy apple and buy an antidote so Rudy's not poisoned, so we don't get the flashing red. It's not actually necessary to complete the run, but necessary for our peace of mind. So right now, the corrupted tool Rudy has is the stopwatch. So he doesn't have a stopwatch animation, so he just kind of does rollerblading during the stopwatch animation, but it functions the same as Cecilia's stopwatch. And that's good because we can no longer switch between Rudy, Cecilia, and Jack. We have to stick to Rudy. So it's nice that his corrupted tool happens to be the stopwatch. So next we're going to do another Ocarina of Bounds. We're going to clip into the ocean here and move down to this continent, which has the Seal Guild, which allows Cecilia to bind advanced level spells. So we got 4 additional crest grafts from the item generation. So the first spell we're going to get is Teleport, which lets us to go back to previously visited cities and towns. Then we're going to get Invisible, which reduces the encounter rate in dungeons. And then 2 attack spells. The first one is High Blast, which is an attack all spell of non-elemental damage, so it's good for killing random mobs in case they have elemental resistances. And the final spell is Randomizer, everyone's favorite spell. It casts a random spell. It has a 60% chance at Cecilia Best Luck to do a high damage spell, and it's higher damage than any other spell she can get normally. So we're going to teleport back to Malama, and this isn't necessary for the run, but it's to do a safety save before the next boss fight, which can be a dangerous fight. Actually, we're going to set up Cecilia before we do the save, just in case we do die. So we just have to set up Cecilia. First thing we want to do is increase her luck to best by using all the small flowers in our inventory. And the other thing we want to do is increase her speed by a whole bunch. As part of her stats getting corrupted from the Hall of Memory manipulation, her response and vitality got set to 0, but her sorcery stat got set to 999, and her MP got set to 2000, which is really good, since that means she doesn't have to recover MP anymore. And on the save screen here, you'll notice that Rudy's level doesn't look quite right, but just ignore that. And we'll leave Malama with the stopwatch, and we're gonna clip back into the ocean again. And be careful not to get back on land. And we're gonna bonk. This prevents encounters while you're traversing the ocean, because there's a lot of traversing we have to do here. And we gotta go to this island here. And this is one of the effects of Hall of Memory manipulation. We actually unlocked the final, or second to last dungeon. Normally you have to complete Arctica Castle before this will show up, but because of Hall of Memory manipulation, we were able to make it show up. And one thing we weren't able to manipulate with Hall of Memory manipulation was Boomerang being defeated, so we still have to fight him. So this is the reason why I'm running Japanese instead of English. These specific story flags I was able to set aren't possible to set in English because the memory alignment isn't quite the same between the versions. So we're going to equip Cecilia with the Sheriff Star and Jack and Rudy with, where's my 4 revives? They're there. With goat dolls. Goat dolls will revive you if you die, so as long as they don't die twice in a single turn, they can't die in this fight. But that is possible in this fight because both Boomerang and Luciad can attack, so that's the only way we can really lose the fight, if both Luciad and Boomerang target the same person and kill them after their goat doll is used up. And that happens to both Jack and Rudy. And because Cecilia does not have a goat doll on, we have Jack and Rudy spamming goat dolls or full revives so that she can be revived every turn. And her speed is so much higher than Boomerang and Luciad. She's guaranteed to go before them. That's one of the high damage spells, so that's good. I'm casting Randomizer, so I'm getting random spells. So yeah, I spam the full revives because she's going to die every turn if she gets targeted at all. The reason we equip the Sheriff Star to her instead of the Goat Doll is if she gets revived by the Goat Doll instead, it will return her MP back to her natural cap, so it will go back to about 50 or so. Actually, should equip that, unequip that berry. And no Goat Dolls to re-equip. So she can't have a Goat Doll on, basically, so in place of that, we just have full revive spam from Jack and Rudy. And Sheriff Star is actually a really good item to have. It absorbs most elements, prevents all status effects, and various other things. So it's actually really good for the final boss of this game, because he likes to use status effects and has elemental damage. So Sheriff Star on Cecilia is actually a really good thing to have, which is one of the reasons why we item generated it. Normally you have to beat Ragu, which is the ultra boss of this game, in order to get the Sheriff Star, but with item generation we can avoid that. So we got Paralysis on Randomizer. I'm actually going to switch to using High Blast. It's unlucky that Rudy was the one that got paralyzed, because I didn't use full revive with Jack that turn because I didn't think it would be necessary. And so Cecilia was dead for that turn. So yeah, bring Cecilia back, and going to use a glitch here where I'm going to go to the equipment menu as Jack and then use the shoulder button to switch to Rudy. Normally you can equip people when they're paralyzed, but you can use that glitch to equip people that are paralyzed. And that's Boomerang down. So we just have Kadingle, then Malduke left. So we've got a good amount of time left. So that's Boomerang dead. So there's a bit of Kadingle traversal, so we have a little bit of downtime here.
Sure thing. If you're just tuning in, RPG Limit Break 2022 is coming to you from Salt Lake City, Utah, and around the world. We're raising money for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which was formed in 1979 as a grassroots advocacy organization by a group of parents whose children suffered with serious mental illnesses, and NAMI has maintained that focus to this day.
Alright, so a bit of out of bounds here. Normally we go through Kadingle by using a camera switch to immediately go to the final room, but because we have all 3 members in the same party, we can't do the camera switch glitch, so we have to traverse it somewhat honestly. And by honestly, I mean going out of bounds, but in a less efficient way. So in order to handle all the random encounters we'll be getting, we just use High Blast. Cecilia is way faster than the enemies, so there's no danger of them going first, and High Blast is ridiculously powerful with Cecilia's maxed out stats. So it can just destroy everything immediately. So the door next to this door is locked, so we have got to go out of bounds to move through it on the other side. And we got to run through it because it'll briefly load that other room, and if you're walking through, you'll get stuck in that door that's locked. So you got to run through to make sure you get through it. We're not using Invisible yet to reduce encounters because we want to go out of bounds, and it's really hard to go out of bounds when you're invisible because you need your character sprite to kind of give a visual indication of when you're lined up with the door and all that. It's technically possible, but a lot more difficult, so delaying using invisibility until I'm out of bounds here. So this is gimbal coin out of bounds. It's different from camera switch out of bounds. It works in more dungeons. Sometimes camera switch out of bounds or party switch out of bounds doesn't work. The out of bounds technique I was using in Lithia's tomb, where I was switching between party members, it doesn't work in this dungeon, for instance. But if you use the gimbal coin, when you would camera or switch party members going out of bounds, it has the same effect. So that's what I'm doing here. So going to go out of bounds or invisible now so that it wears off when I want to go out of bounds again. So this will prevent some encounters going through the next couple of rooms. Probably will still get one more encounter just because it doesn't completely prevent encounters, it just increases the amount of steps you can take before an encounter can trigger, and will take the number of steps required for the encounter even when you're invisible, most likely. So just one more out of bounds here. Oh, we got there without, but we're still invisible, so we're gonna have to try to do this while invisible. So this might work, it probably won't because I had to pause buffer too many times. Okay, invisibility wore off, and I got an encounter. That's usually how this goes. Same thing, just high blast the enemy. So go out of bounds with the gimbal coin here, and this is a similar trick to what I did in Lithia's tomb, where I went through a door that was just outside of bounds, so the load zone is still active. So we're going to use some timing here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. To get into the right position. So just moving down now. So I should hit the load zone with my very accurate timing. Nope, didn't quite make it. So going to set it up again. So I'm going to bonk on the wall just to confirm my exact placement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. Oh, not quite again. That one was a little too cold. The first one was too hot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. That one wasn't even close. I must have got stuck on something there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. Not quite. So bonk again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. Same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. Usually get this first try, but somehow my timing method is failing me here. Yeah, I'm getting stuck on something. It's weird. Just gonna reset the room, actually. So bonk. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. Okay, go a little bit further this time. I gotta move. I'm almost there, just slightly off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. Uh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. It's that easy. Some might say my timing method isn't actually super accurate, but what do they know? So going to save here. this is the end of Kadingle. We still have Malduke to get through. So we're gonna go up here, and this is the teleporter to Malduke. So Malduke is a space colony, so we're gonna go up to space to fight the enemies. But for some reason, we're going down instead of up. And I don't know why. Oh my god. So the last flag we set was triggering the final boss, which happens whenever you enter those portals. You're only supposed to trigger it when you're going back from Malduke, but because we entered that portal while in Kadingle, it still triggered the final boss battle. So that was the final thing we had to set up through the whole memory manipulation. So everyone's all proper set up. So one thing is that Cecilia's luck is bad, so I'm going to make up for that by using High Blast and attacking with Handpan. So usually I use Randomizer here, but because I forgot to buff Cecilia's luck, I blame failing that out of bounds a million times, distracting me. I forgot to boost her Randomizer or her luck for Randomizer. It's not a big deal because I can use High Blast instead, which does a lot of damage as well, and Jack also does a good amount of damage with his regular attack. So just do this instead. So Zeke Tuvai has 49,420 health, something like that. So it usually takes 5 successful randomizers. It'll take about 10 turns with this strat. So not too much more to this fight. The Sheriff Star prevents all status effects, so Zeke Tuvai can't really do anything to Cecilia, who's the main damage dealer. So I want to give a shout out to Cliving and Uru, like I did before, and all the other Wild Arm speedrunners. This game has come a long way since it was just me and Lordo running it, especially with these new glitches found. The hollow memory manipulation stuff was mostly found by me, mostly because I just had more knowledge of the memory addresses, so it just kind of fell on to me to do all that hard work of locating which memory spots we wanted to manipulate and all that. But Uru and Cliving also helped a lot with this route. So people sometimes wonder how these things are figured out, and sometimes it's just by luck, but the whole memory manipulation stuff in particular was a lot of just analysis of stuff, seeing what flags trigger what, and then seeing if we can manipulate that with the character memory positions we could get with hollow memory manipulation. Just that's how we figured out that the Japanese version, for instance, is a better version than the English version for this category. There's potential other uses for it. In other categories, we could set Cecilia's spell damage to always do max damage, even with a spell like Freeze, for instance. We can't do that in this run because it requires a different setup, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff we could potentially do with it. And time is coming up soon. I'm probably a little bit over, but shouldn't be too bad. Once the final hit on Zeke Tuvai happens, so should be... I'm always good at keeping track of health, so might be this turn, question mark. And there we go. That's time. So yeah, that was Wild Arms, No ACE Unrestricted. Very interesting run. You do that one glitch and basically go straight to the end. Wasn't a bad run, other than that failed out of bounds, but hope you all enjoyed it. It was interesting and had a lot of fun routing this and practicing it and showing it off here, so hope you all had some fun, and hope you have fun with the rest of the marathon too.
Thank you so much. GG. What an exciting run. So this is the end for my time at the hosting desk here. Thank you so much for having me. We're going to take a short break here, but then we're going to be back with the Dragon Warrior 2 TAS, so stick around for that.
high school did. They're in limited supply of that. Like that classic style short scale.
We had a string bass player brought his own bass.
Really?
Yeah, he was
Okay, my school had a string bass.
he was transposing all the tuba music himself.
One of my friends has like tiny synthesizer, and she plays the double bass.
You get the arm way up.
She got the tall stool. Look, I don't have like an enormous amount of cash to drop on a speed instrument. A used Q10, like even as SR500F, even at the markup my local place does, it might be worth it. It's a very buttery feeling instrument.
Well, and if you're gonna use it for a lot of time, it'll feel like a lot of money now, but over the course of the time you have it, it's fairly cheap.
Other thing is I've got real tiny hands, so I typically play short scale. This one is not short scale, but like short scale fretless is backwards, so it works out.
I got those pins and patches.
There are some, I forget. That's a real nice looking enamel patches for one of these. Or something.
I missed the beginning part because I didn't get your noise.
I appreciate the Quest 64 bridging between Dragon Warrior 2 and Dragon
Dragon
Warrior
Warrior
2.
2. Yeah.
Is this like fully manipulated?
The Taskbot one? Yeah. They've had a
You know
really
what?
good practice room.
I guess that's the task. That's kind of the silly question. I know once people started doing the fully manipulated RTAs Dragon Warrior stuff, I was like,
Yeah, Dragon Warrior 1 and 2 are both games where they never really expected you to be a kid, quote unquote, get lucky.
yeah.
So the stuff you can do if you do in fact get lucky is are like just a different design philosophy than modern games that not allow luck to dictate your play experience by that degree.
Those were the days. I mean, incidentally, I think you could do the same thing in 3 and one of the two killing Aspire.
All right, everyone, welcome back to RP Jack. Wow, hang on, I'm hearing my own audio.
I mean, the
Especially
GTA
the
games are all fully manipulable.
which is great
All right, welcome back to RPG Limit Break 2022. We are coming to you from Salt Lake City, Utah. We are raising money for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which was formed in 1979 as a grassroots advocacy organization by a group of parents whose children suffered with serious mental illness, and NAMI has maintained that focus to this day. I'm going to be your host for your next couple of games here, including what we are coming up with next, Mutsky, as we will be kicking off a TASBot run by the Axeman of Dragon Warrior 2. So they're just wrapping up, getting set up for that. So as they're doing that, we got a $40 donation from Claire that says, "Good job, bro. All the nostalgia." Thanks so much for that donation, Claire. And with that, I think we're going to be starting to wrap up the setup for this Dragon Warrior 2 TAS. And as soon as they're ready, we'll be rolling with that for you guys.